Well, you see, it's I suppose the first decision that Munster had to make: do we play the game or do we not play? You don't play, you concede a 5 points and a 28-point defeat margin to the opposition.
28-0 it goes into the
28-0, so the opposition get 5 points because they got 4 tries. So therefore, you have to decide: can we possibly do better than that, or just to conserve the honour of Munster and all that, do we put out a team?
Yeah.
But then, you see, the challenge on that front is at the moment their players are divided into 3 distinct groups. You still have those who've been left in South Africa who couldn't come home because they had positive cases.
And without naming individuals, because it's very sensitive for them and their families. Number-wise, how many players are we talking about?
There's between players and staff, there's 14 out there.
Okay.
But they won't get home until next Thursday night.
Forget about that, yeah.
But then there's a question: do they then have to go into quarantine? As of now, they then have to go into a further quarantine for a 10-day period.
Yeah.
Then you have the group that...
Just before we leave that cohort, so to speak, it's possible technically that some of them could play on Sunday, but very unlikely, do you think?
The current regulations in Ireland mean that if they arrive back from South Africa, they have to go into a 10-day quarantine.
Okay.
So that rules them out.
Okay.
Then you've got the players who flew home last week, but they're in quarantine and will be in quarantine until midnight on Saturday night.
Yes.
Now, bear in mind, the Wasps game is 3 o'clock on Sunday in Coventry, which is a further layer, because that means you've got to travel. Now, my information is those players who came home, they're scattered. Some of them are in a hotel in Limerick, some of them are in a house, and there's at least 2 guys I know that are in summer houses in West Cork. Their family are bringing them down food. They're totally isolated. It's a very difficult situation.
And all individuals, so there's nobody together as such.
Nobody together, there's nobody doing any collective training. Those in South Africa are locked in their rooms for they only get out a half an hour a day.
Yeah.
So then the third group are the players from the international squad, like the Peter O'Mahony's, Tyke Burns, Conor Murray's,
who were
all
rested
the lads
for the South African trip.
who didn't go. They were supposed to go out on the Saturday.
Yeah,
now, Craig Casey, for example, he went out on the Friday, and the minute he arrived, came back the following day.
Right.
Others, like Peter O'Mahony, were due to go on the Saturday, but they didn't travel. So they're training in the high-performance unit in Limerick with the Munster Academy players and the sub-academy players. Okay. So it's from that cohort at the moment that you're talking about.
Sub-academy player would be what kind of standard? Where would we have seen them or heard of them? AIL?
AIL, basically. Yeah. Like, I know Corkon played UCC on Saturday. UCC's hooker, Scott Buckley, he was withdrawn for that game. It looks as if he's going to be a sub in the game, but I mean, he was a former back row forward. My information is that he could be used as back row cover.
Yeah. Can I sum up what you said? So it looks like Munster will field a team. It'll be made up of some of their top grade players and some people we've never heard of, to be frank, are only people who are club aficionados. But they will have to fulfil the fixture to avoid a 28-0 defeat. But what happens after that, we don't know. I mean, it's Friday before we know the quality of the team.
You have to name the team on Friday, so therefore you know what the makeup is. At the moment, I think the challenge is getting cover in the front row. We know that in the original tour party, there was 6 props and 4 hookers went to South Africa. Now, we're not sure who's left in South Africa and who is home. Outside of that, the only frontline forwards they have at the moment are Dave Kilcoyne, Tyke Byrne and Peter O'Mahony, whereas they're well stocked in the backs.
OK, well, that's fair enough. So it's looking from a Munster supporter's point of view, the backs are OK.
Yeah, the backs should be Murray, Carberry, Chris Farrell, Delande, Conway, Earls, plus one more.
OK.
So that's nearly full strength. I think the challenge for Ian Costello, who's coaching the team now, and Johan, obviously, is overseeing it all virtually, is whether they risk bringing those guys who came back early, the first crop, whatever, whether they fill the bench with them.
These are the lads whose quarantine runs out at midnight.
Yes, midnight. So whether they basically, particularly for front row, I think to have a tie-head prop, sub-tie-head prop who's played, professional rugby, even though it's obviously none of them have played a long time, they've been in quarantine, all that stuff. That's the balance to weigh up that decision. Is it safer? Because there's a risk either way.
There is, and I mean, when you look at it, you're asking a guy who was in quarantine in South Africa first, came back, he's in quarantine here, to go out and sit on a bench to come on. The first thing you're going to do, you're out of quarantine, 12 o'clock Saturday night, get on a plane Sunday morning, fly to Coventry. None of them have played a game in 8 weeks at best. And the balance, and particularly in the front row, are guys who are in the sub-academy are very inexperienced. So it's going to be a challenge.
For sure.